Feathered OPSEC. Brazilian police officers moved silently toward a small house in 2019, completely confident they were about to surprise a drug-dealing ring. They had spent weeks watching the property and finally decided to raid it. However, just as they stepped onto the front yard, a loud, squawking voice broke the silence, yelling out, "Mamãe, polícia!" which was a clear warning in Portuguese that the police had arrived. The officers rushed inside, expecting to find a human lookout. Instead, they found a small, bright green parrot sitting quietly inside a cage. The local drug dealers had actually trained a pet parrot to act as an early warning security system. They spent time teaching the highly intelligent bird to recognize the specific uniforms of the local police forces. Whenever the parrot saw officers walking down the street, it was trained to scream a specific phrase to alert the criminals hiding inside the house. This warning gave the dealers just enough precious seconds to grab their drugs, hide their money, and try to escape out the back door before the police could break in. What was even crazier is that when the police finally secured the area and caught the suspects, they realized the bird became completely silent. It refused to make a single sound or repeat the warning for the officers. The authorities literally had to take the parrot into custody and carry it out to a police car alongside the criminals. An animal rescue group eventually took the bird to a local zoo. The Silva Way. In 2019, Brazilian prison guards stood at the main exit of a highly secure jail in Rio de Janeiro when they saw a nervous teenage girl walking toward the front door. They were used to seeing family members leave after visiting hours, but this specific girl was walking in a very strange and awkward way. The guards stopped her and asked a few simple questions. When she tried to answer, her nervous shaking gave away something even the guards couldn't believe. The teenage girl was actually a dangerous Brazilian gang leader named Clauvino da Silva. He had planned one of the most wild escape attempts in modern history. When his teenage daughter came to visit him inside the prison, he decided to completely steal her physical identity. He planned to simply walk right out the front door and leave his own daughter sitting behind inside his locked cell. To pull off this massive trick, his outside helpers secretly smuggled him a highly realistic silicone mask. He pulled the incredibly detailed face over his own head, put on a long black wig, and added a pair of glasses. He even squeezed into a pair of tight jeans and wore a bright pink shirt. He actually made it past several heavy security checkpoints deep inside the jail because the mask looked absolutely perfect from a distance. The authorities were totally tricked until he reached the very last gate leading to the street. His nervous body language finally ruined the entire plan. The guards forced him to stand in front of a camera and slowly take off his disguise piece by piece. He pulled off the glasses, removed the dark wig, and finally peeled off the expensive fake face. However, he was just about to succeed. The naked sewer dash. In February 2014, the Mexican Marines smashed through the reinforced steel front door of a safe house in Culiacan. They had spent weeks hunting the famous drug lord known as El Chapo. The authorities were finally closing in after capturing some of his top workers and tracking their secret cell phones. By listening to these private phone calls, the police discovered a hidden network of safe houses used by the drug boss. They tracked a phone signal to this specific house and thought they finally had him trapped. However, as soon as they got in, El Chapo was already gone. While the Marines spent precious minutes battering the thick door, he was inside his bathroom. He pressed a secret switch hidden behind the mirror, and suddenly, the entire bathtub rose up on a hydraulic system. Underneath the bathtub was a dark hole leading to a secret tunnel, which was connected directly to the main sewer system of the city. For hours, completely naked, El Chapo went through the dirty water in the dark underground pipes. The police searched the house and finally discovered the bathroom secret, but they were simply too late. By the time they figured out how the bathtub lifted, El Chapo had traveled too far. He eventually climbed out of a different drain across the city and escaped in a waiting car. The 8 Rings of Security. Colombian were hunting Dairo Antonio Usuga, a powerful drug lord known as Otoniel. For years, the military sent their absolute best soldiers and helicopters into the forest, but every single time they raided his hidden camps, Otoniel was already gone. His bed was still warm, but he had completely vanished into the trees. The police were incredibly frustrated until they finally understood his brilliant defense strategy. Otoniel had built a massive human shield known as the 8 Rings of Security. Instead of just hiding inside a strong building, he spread thousands of his armed men in large circles across miles of thick jungle. The outside circle, or the first ring, was made up of normal-looking farmers and local villagers who acted as secret spies. If a police helicopter flew overhead or a stranger walked into town, these spies immediately warned the next circle using small radios. By the time the military fought their way past the outside guards, the warning message had already passed through 6 more rings of heavily armed soldiers. Otoniel sat perfectly safe in the very center, which was the 8th ring. He refused to use cell phones because the government could easily track the electronic signals. Instead, He only used human messengers to deliver written notes on paper. He also kept specially trained guard dogs to bark if anyone got too close to his personal tent. Because of this massive early warning system, he never had to fight the police directly. The moment the outside ring saw danger, Ottoniel simply packed up his things and walked deeper into the jungle, long before the authorities even got close to his actual location. He also never slept in the exact same bed for more than a few days to keep the authorities constantly confused. It eventually took a massive invasion with hundreds of elite soldiers dropping directly from the sky to finally break through all 8 rings at the exact same time and catch him. This drug lord outsmarted the entire military for over a decade with this technique. The Cadaver Connection. Military cargo planes landed on American airstrips in the early 1970s, bringing home the tragic victims of the Vietnam War. Customs agents respectfully waved the thick wooden boxes through security, never imagining they were staring at one of the most shocking drug smuggling operations in history. An American drug boss named Frank Lucas claimed he had built a completely untouchable system called the Cadaver Connection. The police eventually discovered that Lucas and his partners hired a carpenter to make special shipping crates. These large wooden boxes were used to transport the heavy metal coffins on the airplanes. The carpenter built secret hidden spaces into the thick wooden bottoms of these crates, and the smugglers packed hundreds of pounds of illegal drugs into these empty spaces right under the noses of military police in Asia. Because border guards and customs officials were too respectful to deeply search the boxes carrying dead soldiers, the illegal shipments flew perfectly safely on official government airplanes. The drugs arrived right at military bases in the United States, completely skipping normal border control. By using this method, Lucas built a massive criminal empire and became a millionaire. Superwater. Millions of boxes of fresh fruit and vegetables arrived from South America every single week, and cartels knew that too. They had an idea, using the natural design of a very common tropical fruit to completely fool the border guards, the coconut. The cartels hired expert scientists to perform a complex chemical process that actually turned their solid white cocaine powder into a clear, water-like liquid. Then, workers took thousands of real, fresh coconuts and carefully drilled a tiny hole in the hard outer shell of each one. They drained out all the natural sweet coconut water from inside the fruit. Next, they used long medical needles to inject the clear liquid drug directly into the empty space. Finally, they sealed the tiny hole with special glue and rubbed dirt over the shell so it looked perfectly natural and completely untouched. They mixed these spiked coconuts into massive shipping containers filled with thousands of totally normal coconuts. When the cargo arrived at the busy ports, the security scanners saw nothing suspicious at all. The machines just showed a hard round shell filled with liquid, which is exactly what a normal coconut is supposed to look like. The thick, natural shell also hid the smell of the chemicals from the police dogs. The authorities waved the massive shipments of fruit right through the gates, completely unaware that a fortune in illegal products was hiding inside. Once the coconuts safely reached a secret warehouse in a new country, the cartel scientists simply cracked them open, drained the trapped liquid, and turned them right back into standard white powder. With this method, the drug lords easily moved huge amounts of their illegal cargo right past the best security teams in the world. Parasite torpedoes. With the advent of huge X-ray machines, the cartels realized that trying to hide their illegal products inside the ship was simply getting too risky. They needed a way to use the massive commercial cargo ships without actually putting anything on board. To solve this huge problem, they found a completely new method. They hired expert scuba divers and built thick metal tubes, which they packed full of illegal drugs. They called these the parasite torpedoes. In the dark of the night, the cartel divers secretly swam underneath enormous, completely innocent cargo ships waiting at the docks. Keep in mind that these cargo ships weren't theirs, they were just normal ones. Using heavy industrial magnets or underwater tools, they attached the drug-filled torpedoes directly to the bottom of the ship, deep below the waterline. They also attached waterproof tracking devices, so they always knew exactly where the drugs were located. When the sun came up, the massive ship sailed across the ocean to a different country. The captain, the crew, and the shipping company had absolutely no idea they were dragging a fortune in illegal cargo. Once the ship safely arrived at its final destination, another team of cartel divers quietly slipped into the harbor water. They swam under the massive boat, detached the magnets, and pulled the torpedo away. By the time customs agents started checking the boxes up on the deck, the illegal drugs were already completely gone. Lord of the Skies strategy. Around the 80s, powerful cartel bosses watched their expensive shipments get caught by the police, since the authorities had finally figured out their usual tricks. Border Patrol agents easily tracked the small, slow airplanes and tiny speedboats the criminals used to sneak drugs across the border. Every time a drug lord tried to send a small package, police helicopters and radar systems were waiting for them. Millions of dollars were lost almost every single week. Just when the drug bosses thought they were running out of options, in the late 1980s, a man named Amado Carrillo Fuentes completely changed the game. Counterintuitively, he realized that trying to be small and sneaky was a huge mistake. Instead, he bought an entire fleet of enormous Boeing 727 airplanes. He removed all the passenger seats to create huge empty spaces inside. Then, he loaded each plane with literal tons of illegal products from Colombia. The authorities were totally unprepared for this massive scale, as they didn't expect it at all. Because these big planes looked and acted exactly like regular commercial flights, they easily blended into normal air traffic. The police screen watchers could not tell the difference between a normal passenger flight and a giant flying drug truck. This bold move allowed him to move more illegal cargo in a single trip than other cartels could move in a whole month. He made billions of dollars and earned the famous nickname, the Lord of the Skies. The authorities were left completely overwhelmed and forced to rethink their entire tracking strategy because of a single criminal: the medieval method. For many years, the cartels were incredibly frustrated because, at the Mexico-US border, the government kept building the fences taller and taller. Sending men to climb over the wall with heavy backpacks was getting too dangerous because Border Patrol agents and motion sensors were everywhere. Digging deep underground tunnels cost millions of dollars and took many months of hard labor. The drug bosses needed a fast, cheap, and quiet way to move heavy packages right over the heads of the American guards without ever stepping foot on United States soil. To solve this massive problem, they looked backward in history. The cartels actually built a full-sized medieval catapult right next to the border fence. The smugglers welded strong steel pipes together to make a heavy base and attached thick elastic bands to a long throwing arm. In the middle of the night, the operators loaded large, tightly wrapped bundles of marijuana into the basket of the machine. With the pull of a lever, the catapult silently launched packages weighing almost 50 pounds high into the dark sky. The heavy bundles easily cleared the tall steel fence and landed safely in the American desert, where partners were waiting in hidden cars to quickly pick them up. When Border Patrol agents finally found one of these machines attached to the southern side of the fence on camera, they were completely stunned. They were equipped with highly advanced radar systems, expensive helicopters, and night vision cameras. But the criminals had completely outsmarted their billion-dollar security wall using a simple machine designed hundreds of years ago: the black gold. Customs officers at international airports ran their usual tests on heavy bags of dark industrial powder, completely unaware that a massive fortune was sitting right in front of them. For years, the police were trained to look for white powder hidden inside secret compartments of cars or luggage. To beat this, the cartels hired brilliant chemists who invented a clever method to create a completely new substance: black cocaine. They took regular white cocaine and mixed it with chemical compounds like charcoal. This special mixture not only completely changed the physical appearance of the illegal drug to a dark, messy substance that looked exactly like printer ink, fertilizer, or metal shavings, but it also hid the strong smell, so the highly trained police dogs could not detect it at all. Incredibly enough, if a security officer grew suspicious and used a standard chemical testing kit, the dark color and extra chemicals even stopped the test from working properly. Since the tests showed nothing illegal, the authorities simply waved the innocent-looking cargo right through the border. Once the dark powder safely arrived in the new country, the cartels shipped it to a secret laboratory. There, different chemists used special liquids called solvents to wash away the black chemicals. After a quick chemical wash, the dark powder separated and turned right back into pure white cocaine, ready to be sold on the streets. Thanks to this invention, the drug lords easily smuggled tons of cargo through the front doors of the tightest security checkpoints in the world: EncroChat and SkyECC. For years, police across Europe watched massive shipments of illegal drugs arrive at seaports, completely confused about how the criminals were organizing it all without leaving any digital clues. The police tapped phones and watched known gang members, but they heard absolutely nothing. The drug lords had completely outsmarted the authorities by doing something unheard of. They switched to some devices known as EncroChat and SkyECC. These looked like normal smartphones on the outside, but their creators had physically removed the camera, the microphone, and the location tracker. This meant the police could not secretly hack the phones to listen to conversations or see exactly where the criminals were hiding. To use the secret messaging system, the gangster had to open a regular-looking calculator app and type a hidden code. This unlocked a private network where all messages used heavy encryption. Criminals paid thousands of dollars for these special phones because they offered basically total safety. If the police ever raided a house and grabbed the device, the drug lord just had to type a panic password, which instantly deleted every single message and contact on the phone forever. Because of this clever technology, the biggest cartels operated totally in the dark for a long time. Body switch. For quite a while, the Brazilian police were looking for Juan Carlos Ramirez Abadia, a powerful Colombian drug boss known as Chupeta. The thing is that they were regularly looking at him without even knowing it. The authorities had even offered a massive reward to anyone who could help find him, but Chupeta had pulled a pretty hardcore trick. He paid doctors to perform extreme plastic surgery, altering his jaw, cheekbones, eyes, nose, and ears. He looked absolutely nothing like his old wanted posters. Because of this completely new face, he lived quietly in Brazil for years. He bought expensive properties and managed his illegal network without anyone recognizing him on the street. He used fake names and fake identification cards the whole time. The police were actively searching for a face that literally did not exist anymore. He could walk right past police officers who had no idea they were looking at one of the most wanted men in the world. All of this worked until it didn't. Chupeta made one critical mistake. Even though he changed his physical appearance, he didn't change how he sounded. The police had secretly recorded his private phone calls and used voice analysis technology. The authorities compared his recent phone calls to old recordings of Chupeta, and the computer proved it was a perfect match. In 2023, he was convicted and sentenced to 20 years of imprisonment. But in 2024, he was released with protected witness status and a new identity, so he's still roaming the streets. Los Monstros. For years, local drug cartels in Mexico lost millions of dollars and countless men during brutal battles over territory. Whenever they tried to move their illegal products through rival neighborhoods, heavily armed police and military units would set up strict blockades. The cartels usually drove regular pickup trucks and sport utility vehicles, which offered absolutely no protection. In massive street shootouts, police bullets would easily tear through the thin metal doors and shatter the glass windows. The drug bosses were incredibly frustrated because they were constantly losing their most valuable cargo and their best drivers to simple police traps. They realized they needed a way to survive the heavy gunfire and smash straight through the authorities without taking any damage. To solve this problem, they began secretly buying heavy commercial dump trucks and large tractors. Then, the cartels hired expert metalworkers to completely transform these normal work vehicles into, crazily enough, private homemade tanks. These workers spent weeks welding, attaching thick steel plates all over the outside of the trucks. They completely covered the fragile engine parts, the tires, and the driving cabin so no police bullets could get inside. They even cut small holes in the thick steel walls so their own men could shoot outside safely while remaining completely protected. Some of these vehicles were fitted with heavy metal battering rams on the front to easily crush police cars or break down the walls of rival gang safe houses. The criminals proudly called their terrifying new creations Los Monstruos, which is the Spanish word for the monsters. When local police officers first faced these rolling steel walls in the streets, they were totally shocked and overwhelmed. Their standard police weapons were completely useless against the heavy armor, and their bullets just bounced harmlessly off the sides. The drug lords could simply drive straight through a police trap, perfectly safe inside their moving metal forts. It eventually took the actual Mexican military bringing in powerful explosive weapons just to stop these homemade beasts from destroying everything in their path. Jungle narco submarines. Coast Guard ships used to patrol the open ocean with advanced tracking systems, mostly looking for speedboats. However, drug cartels had something new in mind. Deep inside the thick jungles of Colombia, they were already building something on a completely new level. They spent millions of dollars to bring heavy generators, steel, and expert boat builders deep into the swampy forests where police planes could not see them. In these remote camps, workers spent months building massive vessels known as narco submarines. In the beginning, these were just regular boats made to sit slightly lower in the ocean, but soon, the cartels started building highly advanced ones. A semi-submersible is a special type of boat designed to travel almost completely under the water, with only a tiny breathing pipe and a small window sticking out above the surface. Because the main body of the ship was hidden underwater, it became almost invisible to military radar. The builders used fiberglass, a very strong but lightweight material made of plastic and glass threads instead of standard metal. This made the vessels even harder for radar machines to detect. To hide from police helicopters that used thermal cameras to look for hot engines in the dark, the engineers designed clever cooling pipes that mixed the hot engine exhaust with freezing ocean water before releasing it. These custom machines were incredibly uncomfortable for the people driving them. A crew of 3 or 4 men had to squeeze into a tiny, dark, and hot wooden box with no toilet, breathing heavy diesel fumes while sailing across the dangerous ocean for weeks. However, a single trip could carry up to 10 tons of illegal drugs worth hundreds of millions of dollars, making the million-dollar cost of building the submarine seem like a tiny expense. If a police boat ever accidentally stumbled upon one of the manned submarines submarines in the middle of the sea, the crew had one final trick to outsmart the authorities. They simply pulled a special emergency valve that instantly flooded the entire boat with ocean water. The crew would jump into the sea to be rescued by the police, while the multi-million-dollar submarine and all the illegal cargo sank straight to the dark bottom of the ocean, leaving the authorities with absolutely zero physical evidence to use in court. This incredible hidden industry allowed cartels to move massive amounts of illegal products right past the world's most advanced navies without anyone even knowing they were there. The technology eventually became so advanced that some drug lords stopped using human drivers entirely. They began building completely unmanned autonomous ghost submarines. The cartels attached special satellite internet antennas directly to the top of the vessels, allowing bosses to drive the submarines across the ocean using a remote control from a safe house in another country. The Tree Scheme. As time went on, traditional methods used by drug lords, such as using standard shipping boxes or hollow metal pipes, became obsolete because police scanning machines easily spotted the hidden packages. The cartels needed a container that was so thick and heavy that even the best security cameras could not see inside. However, this could have raised questions, so they decided to use the international timber trade to solve their massive problem instead. The smugglers bought huge amounts of mahogany, a very expensive and incredibly dense type of wood from South America. Because this specific wood is so naturally thick, standard border machines simply could not scan all the way through a giant tree trunk. Cartel workers took the massive logs and used heavy industrial drills to carefully cut deep holes straight down the middle. They hollowed out the center of the wood, leaving just a thick outer shell. Then, they packed hundreds of pounds of illegal drugs tightly into the dark, empty space. To make the trick absolutely perfect, they plugged the ends with matching pieces of wood, glued them shut, and covered the cracks with dirt and rough tree bark. When these giant wooden logs arrived at busy international ports, border guards just saw normal trees. Even if they brought in sniffing dogs, the thick natural wood and strong smell of tree sap blocked the scent of the chemicals hiding inside. The authorities waved millions of dollars in illegal cargo right past security, thinking they were just passing heavy materials for a furniture factory. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, join my Discord, link in the description.